It's a real good time to be in the real estate business. Prices are soaring. Home buyers are offering tens of thousands of dollars over asking prices, and more renters are being priced out of town. Check out Realtor.com's report on last month's real estate costs. Studio apartment rents rose about 21% year over year. 21%. One and two bedrooms each rose about 19%. And where is the rent rising the most? The Sun Belt. The top four metro areas are all in Florida. The fifth, San Diego, California. Joining us now is Liam Dillon. He covers housing affordability for the Los Angeles Times. Mr. Dillon, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
I used to live in California. I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, where it seems like it's always expensive and getting more so. So I understand what's happening there. Talk to us about what's happening in Southern California. What is it about the region that's making the rents and the cost of living rise so fast?
So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but I think at base, it's simply a matter of there not being enough homes available for everybody who wants to live in Southern California. I mean, it's been for decades, we've seen not significant increases in home construction while, the economy has been great in the Bay Area. The economy has been very good in Southern California. And so you see this sort of clash of supply and demand really meeting with the rubber meeting the road. At the same time, you've seen this, large increase in millennial population, which is entering sort of prime, sort of family formation years, looking for bigger homes. And so all this is happening again, and also in the middle of a pandemic, and all these forces are coming together to make it very, very difficult for people to afford to live here.
Home construction is also highly, highly political in California, right? I imagine that there are a lot of parts of Southern California where longtime residents who drove out to California in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s expecting to, have their plot of land and, live their California dream, don't feel like losing their view of the coastline. They paid for it decades ago, and they're going to keep it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of situations where, you have this sort of not in my backyard mentality, right? Where folks, use laws that exist in California and have been put into place, predominantly since the 70s that make it much, much harder to build here. The state is trying to do some things in that regard by allowing for, say, duplex construction, fourplex construction in neighborhoods that were previously only reserved for single-family homes. But again, the supply and demand imbalance is really what's driving a lot of this, and I think particularly so when it comes to the construction of low-income housing. I mean, those shortages of available homes for the poorest residents in the state and homeless residents in the state are even lower, right? And there's a significant shortage in funding to help support the construction of those new homes. And so really all around, shortage of available homes for everybody, shortage of money to support the construction of low-income homes, and you sort of see the result is what you have here.
What about the people, who are in Southern California who are trying to find a way to just live? I mean, I remember seeing all of these polls and graphs during the pandemic saying, oh, people are fleeing the San Francisco Bay Area. Texas's Governor Greg Abbott made a big deal of how people were leaving California for Texas. If you dig into the post office data where people moved to, most of the people who moved were moving out of San Francisco to like Oakland. They weren't fleeing the region, and then they moved elsewhere in California, then they left the state. But I'm guessing those are people who have the economic means to move at all. What about the people who don't? What becomes of them?
Yeah, I think what you're really seeing in the migration data that you referenced is, this sort of, if you're affluent enough, you can find a way, right? And you can find a way to live. And even if you're, middle class, upper middle class, you're paying more on rent. And maybe you can't afford to buy a house, but you can afford to live in California. At the lowest end of the economic spectrum, of course, this is why you've seen the explosion in homelessness. This huge number, largest population of unsheltered residents in the country is in California. That number's only been growing, and we expect it to grow, during the pandemic. What you're really seeing the outflow, though, is those who are, lower working class, lower middle class, who just the rents are going up so much where they really, have to be able to find sort of more house somewhere else. And I think a really good example of that is the city of Fresno in the Central Valley, one of the poorest places in the state. And yet, from 2017 forward, even when urban rents were decreasing during the pandemic in San Francisco and in LA, they were continuing to go up in Fresno, up 39% average rents have risen between 2017 and 2021, and just to a point where folks there really could no longer afford to live in the state at all.
Briefly, we heard from a few of you about how you're dealing with rent. Welshman tweeted, "Thank God we decided to buy a condo when we returned to San Diego after being stationed in Singapore for 3 years in 2014. No way we could afford rent in our neighborhood, which is more than our mortgage." Before I got to let you go, how much political will is there to do something about all this? I know Los Angeles is getting ready to have a mayoral election. Is this an issue that's coming up in local politics before we go?
Oh, absolutely. And I think most, particularly in LA, it's the homelessness issue. I mean, really, literally everywhere you go, you see evidence of unsheltered homelessness everywhere. And it's the prominent top of the line, not even a close second. Is there any other issue other than homelessness in LA? And of course, housing affordability is very much tied into that. I think many experts agree the primary reason for increase in homelessness is because the rents are, soaring, right? And if you can't afford your apartment, then you're often not very close or not very far away, rather, from living on the street. And that's what you're seeing in LA. And so, I think there's been a lot of political attention to this. The governor 2 years ago, even before the pandemic, Gavin Newsom, dedicated his entire State of the State speech to homelessness issues. And, a lot of new money is flowing in. There are a lot of new ideas, but at the same time, nothing that we're really seeing that sort of gets at the heart of the matter, which is we need to see a significant increase in home construction and a significant increase in construction and money towards low-income housing development.
Liam Dillon of the Los Angeles Times, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.